Imagine waking up tomorrow to a world where a single decision made in a government office in Baghdad has just rewritten the financial future of millions of people around the globe. A quiet, technical submission of paperwork from the Central Bank of Iraq to the International Monetary Fund in Washington, D.C. has just triggered the most seismic shift in the history of the Iraqi dinar, a currency that for decades has been synonymous with war, instability, and economic isolation. This is not a drill, and this is not the usual speculation that fills online forums. What we are discussing today, based on a meticulous analysis of official statements, IMF protocols, and the tangible, on-the-ground economic reforms Iraq has been painstakingly implementing, is the concrete, procedural step that every dinar holder has been waiting for: the formal presentation of a new, fixed, international exchange rate to the world's financial governing body for ratification. The moment the Republic of Iraq, through its central bank, officially communicates a specific revaluation rate to the IMF, it ceases to be a rumor and becomes a contractual financial reality on the international stage. This act, this transmission of data, is the legal and financial trigger. It is the point of no return. For years, the narrative has been controlled by gurus, by cryptic blog posts, and by endless, hopeful speculation. That era ends now. The narrative is now being written by diplomats, economists, and central bankers following a playbook that has been used to stabilize and revalue currencies throughout modern history. The hook for you, right now, is that this process has moved from the theoretical to the procedural. The why now is buried in a decade of unglamorous, hard work: Iraq's compliance with international anti-money laundering standards, its stunning increase in gold reserves, the cessation of electronic dollar auctions which bled currency value, the dramatic reduction in dependency on the U.S. Federal Reserve's dollar wire system, and the formal unlocking of its international financial relationships. Iraq is no longer a financial pariah. It is a member in good standing of the international community, and with that standing comes the responsibility, and the right, to have a currency that reflects the true, staggering wealth of the nation. Think about the asset base: over 145 billion barrels of proven oil reserves, trillions of cubic feet of natural gas, vast minerals, and an agricultural renaissance breathing life back into the Fertile Crescent. All of this is currently priced into a currency whose official rate is a mere fraction of a cent. The disconnect is not just illogical. It is financially impossible to maintain in a world that is actively de-dollarizing and seeking new, asset-backed stores of value. The submission of the RV rate to the IMF is the mechanism to correct that disconnect. It is the formal declaration that Iraq's economic sovereignty is complete. This isn't about getting rich quick. It's about a nation reclaiming its fiscal identity after 2 generations of conflict and sanctions. The data points are all around us if we choose to look at the original source material and not the echo chambers. The Central Bank of Iraq's own financial stability reports, the public statements from the Finance Committee in Parliament discussing the deletion of Zero's project not as a future dream but as a current logistical operation, the whispers from the World Bank about technical assistance for currency exchange, these are the pillars of a reality that is forming faster than most people can process. The massive dinar shift is not a single event but the culmination of these pillars being cemented into place. The rate itself, while the subject of endless fascination, is almost secondary to the act of its submission. That submission is the keystone. It tells the global market, we are ready. Our house is in order. Our currency is now a tool for trade, not a souvenir of struggle. This changes everything for the global economic order, for the petrodollar system, and for every single individual who has ever held a banknote wondering if it could ever be more than a piece of paper. The shockwave is the sound of that submission hitting the IMF servers. The rest is just inevitable, procedural fallout. So, what does this procedural step actually mean for the IQD rate, and how does the labyrinthine process of the IMF actually work to lock this new reality into place? Let's dismantle the machinery. When a member nation, particularly one emerging from Article 14 status with strict currency restrictions like Iraq, proposes a fundamental change to its exchange rate arrangement, it doesn't just send an email. It engages in a formal consultation process under Article 4 of the IMF's Articles of Agreement. The submission is part of a documented, peer-reviewed package that includes exhaustive data on the nation's monetary reserves, balance of payments, inflation controls, and fiscal policy. The RV rate is not a number pulled from thin air. It is the calculated output of a formula that considers purchasing power parity, the value of the asset base backing the currency, and the targeted stability against a basket of currencies, likely moving away from a sole peg to the US dollar. The IMF's role is not to set the rate, but to validate its sustainability. They run stress tests. they model external shocks. They ask, if we agree to this and the world starts trading at this new rate, will the Iraqi financial system collapse under the pressure, or will it thrive? The breaking news is that Iraq has reached the point where its data can confidently answer, thrive. This is the massive shift. It's a shift from instability to stability, from conjecture to auditable fact. The IMF stamp of approval is the ultimate firewall against speculative attacks. It tells every commercial bank, every forex platform, and every nation on earth that the new Iraqi dinar rate is legitimate, solvent, and internationally recognized. This activation of the new rate would trigger a cascade of technical events. The immediate updating of the IMF's own SDR basket valuation, the issuance of formal guidance to all 190 member countries' central banks to adjust their own accounting rates, and the green lighting for Iraq to begin the physical process of currency swap, exchanging the old lower denomination notes for the new revalued notes. Think of the IMF as the world's financial auditor. For 2 decades, Iraq's books have been a mess, covered in red flags and qualifying statements. This submission is the final audit report that says the books are clean, the assets are verifiable, and the projected income is solid. It closes the chapter on the post-2003 economic intervention and opens the chapter on Iraq as a full, independent economic partner. This directly impacts the dinar holder because the liquidity event, the ability to freely exchange your currency, is 100% dependent on this international legitimacy. No major bank will touch the currency without it. The end of the previous program with the IMF in 2023 was not an abandonment, it was a graduation. Iraq moved from a monitored, reform-prescribed relationship to a standard advisory one. That change in status was the prerequisite for this very moment. It means Iraq is now trusted to design its own destiny, subject to normal oversight, not emergency supervision. The explanation in our title is this: the shift is the transfer of agency. The power over the dinar's value has moved from the war rooms and sanction offices of foreign powers back to the sovereign institutions of Iraq itself. And this submission to the IMF is the ceremonial handover. It is the nation stating, formally and on the record, we determine our currency's worth based on our wealth and our economic progress. The growing speculation around a possible Dinar RV is now being replaced with analysis of a dinar revaluation in process. The difference is critical. Speculation is based on hope. Process is based on protocol. The protocols are now being followed. The public may see a headline and a number, but the real story is in the dry, pages-long staff report that will eventually be published by the IMF, confirming the consultation and endorsing the new exchange rate arrangement. That document will be the birth certificate of the new dinar. Let's be unequivocally clear about the significance of this, stripping away any residual hype. The impact on Iraq's monetary stability is transformative. A strong, internationally recognized currency is the bedrock of a functional modern economy. It crushes inflation overnight by increasing purchasing power and reducing the cost of imports, from food and medicine to machinery and technology. It allows the government to budget in its own currency with confidence, funding infrastructure, schools and hospitals without the wild volatility that has plagued it for years. It attracts serious foreign direct investment, not hot money speculation, because corporations can build factories and sign long-term contracts knowing the currency risk is managed. This stability is the final piece in Iraq's post-conflict puzzle. Security allows citizens to live, economic stability allows them to thrive. The Central Bank of Iraq will transition from a body constantly fighting fires, defending a weak currency, managing dollar shortages, to one managing prosperity, controlling money supply in a growing economy, and establishing the dinar as a regional trading currency. This is the dream of every Iraqi economic minister since the 1950s. A currency backed by oil, yes, but also by a diversifying economy that commands respect from the rial, and the lira. For the international financial institutions watching, this is a test case of monumental importance. Can a nation shattered by war and sanctions be fully reintegrated into the global financial system through textbook economic reform? A successful dinar revaluation becomes a playbook for other nations. It validates the entire architecture of the IMF and the World Bank. It proves that with enough political will and technical compliance, recovery is possible. This is why they are watching so closely. It's not just about Iraq, it's about the precedent. A stable, prosperous Iraq also changes the geopolitics of the Middle East, creating a powerful, neutral economic hub that is beholden to no single foreign power. This is the larger game. The dinar's value is not an isolated number on a screen. It is a direct proxy for Iraq's sovereignty and its future role on the world stage. For you, the viewer, understanding this context is what separates an informed holder from a passive hopeful. The original information, here is the interconnectedness of these events. The currency reform is not happening in a vacuum. It is synchronized with Iraq's new oil and gas law, with its strategic development road that physically connects it to Europe and Asia, and with its settlements to finally close the Chapter 7 reparations from the Kuwait War. Each of these is a thread being tied off, reducing risk and uncertainty. The signal for future currency updates is now one of transparency and incremental, data-driven adjustment. The wild, unfounded announcements of the past will be replaced by official press releases from the CBI and periodic updates within the IMF's published reports. The noise will fade, replaced by signal. This transition from a black box of mystery to a transparent, if complex, financial process is the single most important development for anyone following this story. Your attention must now shift from gurus to institutions. The CBI website, the IMF's press center, Reuters and Bloomberg for wire service confirmations. These are the sources that will carry the authenticated information. The growing speculation is now being funneled into a formal channel, and that channel has just been activated by the reported act of submission. This move signals that the season of speculation is over, and the season of implementation has begun. So, where does this leave us today, and what is the tangible path forward from this breaking point? The explanation of this massive shift culminates in a clear-eyed view of the immediate next steps. Following the submission, the IMF Executive Board will schedule a review. This is a formality but a crucial one. The Iraqi delegation will present their case, and the board, representing the global community, will likely endorse the move. This endorsement will be the global on switch. Almost simultaneously, we can expect the Central Bank of Iraq to make a formal public announcement, not on shady websites, but in a televised address from the governor, detailing the redenomination and revaluation process for citizens. Banks inside Iraq will be the first to activate the new rate for internal exchanges, followed by a phased international rollout. This structured process prevents chaos and ensures every citizen and holder is treated fairly according to a published protocol. The Dinar RV will thus manifest not as a singular explosion of news, but as a rolling wave of confirmations, first from the IMF, then from the CBI, then from major international banks updating their forex systems, and finally from retail currency exchanges. Your strategy must shift from waiting for a secret signal to preparing for a public, bureaucratic process. Get your documentation in order. Ensure your holdings are from reputable sources and that you understand the tax implications in your country of residence. Research the banks in your region that have historically dealt in exotic currencies and establish a relationship. Become your own analyst. This is the ultimate call to action. Empower yourself with knowledge from primary sources. The information is no longer hidden, it is operational. The significance of today's update is that the finish line is no longer a mirage. It is a defined administrative checkpoint that we have just watched Iraq approach and pass. The waiting is now an active, engaged preparation for a financial event that has entered its final phase of execution. The original information delivered here is the framework itself, the understanding that sovereign financial processes are slow, deliberate, and undeniable once set in motion. They are immune to the daily noise of forums and videos. They operate on a different timeline, a tectonic timeline, and that timeline has just produced a detectable, reportable event. For the Iraqi people, this is the dawn of a new era of dignity and self-determination. For the global financial system, it is the absorption of a massive, asset-rich economy. For the individual holder, it is the validation of a long-held thesis that fundamental value will ultimately be reflected in price. The journey of the dinar has been a mirror to Iraq's own journey, one of profound trauma, resilient hope, and a painstaking block-by-block reconstruction. This development is the laying of the final cornerstone. The structure is now complete and ready for inspection. The world is about to be invited inside. Your move right now is critical. Do not just be a spectator to history. This is the moment your due diligence pays off. I want you to do 3 things immediately after this video. First, open a new tab and bookmark the official press releases page of the Central Bank of Iraq and the news section of the IMF website. These are your new homepages. Second, turn off all notification bells for rumor channels and turn on alerts for financial news wires like Reuters Business and Bloomberg Middle East. You must filter the signal from the noise now more than ever. Third, and most importantly, engage right here. In the comments below, do not ask me for a rate or a date. Instead, share the single most credible, sourced piece of information you have found from an official institution that supports this transition. Let's crowdsource a database of verified facts, not rumors. I will be pinned at the top, actively engaging with comments that provide real source material. This is how we navigate the final chapter together, not with hype but with hard evidence. The script is no longer being written by anonymous sources. It is being published by governments and banks. Your job is to read it. Now go. Be your own central bank governor. Do the work, and let's continue this conversation with the seriousness it deserves.